Monotony does not kill, provided it serves the purpose. Hello, wherever you are. A very, very warm welcome to the first edition of Globe Watch for 2015. I'm Charles Bune in Yaoundé. Defeated, the Palestinian move to have their own state through the United Nations Security Council has been rejected after at least 8 of the 15-member council rejected the call from Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. The normal rhetoric from Israel was, of course, achieved, and days after, Palestinian Authority President signed in for the International Criminal Court permanent statute of the Rome to become a member. The intention introduced Israel into war crimes and crimes against humanity. With the failure of the Palestinian move to have their own state through the United Nations Security Council, should we expect more bloodier confrontations, or are Israelis and Palestinians finally tired of controversial policies? My guest today on Globe Watch is the former Israeli Foreign Ministry Director for Palestinian Affairs and Regional Cooperation. He serves today as the country's ambassador to Cameroon. Israeli diplomat NADAV COHEN, welcome to Globe Watch.
Thank you very much.
Roughly 350 days ago, you were guest on this program to defend all Israeli policies towards the Palestinians as justified and justifiable. Have recent occurrences since we last met changed your views anyhow today?
First of all, I would like to wish all the Cameroonian people Happy New Year of 2015. Secondly, this year the embassy invested a lot of activity to increase the cooperation between Israel and the Cameroonian people and the Cameroonian government on agriculture. And the embassy did few projects on humanitarian fields, in refugee camp, and regarding the Ebola. Secondly, regarding your question, I would like to mention that my view hasn't changed. I still support the two-state for two people solution, and this is also our government policy. The main difference between our government position and what the Palestinians did last year, not only last week, but along the year, that we said no matter what is the dispute and the argument, we should settle them during negotiation and not by unilateral steps.
You just said that your views have not changed. And that is the fundamental problem with Israeli policies. While all other nations across the world are dynamic realist state, Israel remains the only static realist state. You don't change your tactics. Why?
I would like to remind you that in 2000, former President Bill Clinton offered a very generous solution for the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Israeli government accepted, the Palestinians had rejected, and continued with the violence against Israel. Not last year, but in 2008, our former Prime Minister offered a very generous, even much better
Ehud
Olmert proposal than Clinton proposal and the Arab Initiative proposal, and Abu Mazen until today didn't respond officially for this proposal. Even in the last few years, there were a lot of talks, discreetly talks, in all of them, in the end, who was a step out from the talks were the Palestinians, not Israel. The fact that the majority of the countries in the world support the Palestinian position doesn't say it's the right position. I would like to remind you what happened with Libya, that the majority of the international community supported the move to remove Gaddafi. And then we see what happened today in Libya. The situation is much worse. And also it helped Boko Haram to strengthen himself, and instead of being a threat only for Nigeria, it became a regional threat, including to Cameroon.
Some analysts would tell you that those are two different ball games, because the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is older than all of us living on earth, and everybody says that the difficulty is Israeli policies, and that is why the Swedish government has recognized the existence of the Palestinian state, and the next move is that Israel recalled its ambassador from Sweden. Why don't you think that since settlement cannot be stopped, Jewish colonization not be stopped of Palestinian territories, the best way is to use other methods, including simply an international acclamation of a Palestinian state, like what happened to Israel in 1948?
I don't understand the question. Can you repeat it more specifically?
Specifically, everybody says that the Jewish are continuing their colonization of Palestinian states or territories, and the only way left for the Palestinians is to have a state established through the international community method, like what happened to the state of Israel in 1948. A simple acclamation, right?
No, it's totally different story. In 1948, Israel used only diplomatic means. In 1947, Israel got support by the UN to establish a Jewish state in the area, in the Palestinians.
Controversial methods which Israel used to establish their state in 1948, including threats, including acts of violence. You remember the King David.
I haven't heard that using trade or diplomatic or political interest or economic interest is something against the law, first of all. I would like to tell you that the Jewish people, the Jewish community in the area of Palestine, this is the only time it called Palestine, this area, it was under the British mandate.
Sure.
And at that time, the Jewish community was ready to live in peace with the Arabs who live in Palestine area. Today, about 50% of the Palestinian people who live in our region are supporting Hamas and another Palestinian opposition groups that call to destroy the state of Israel and to continue the violence against Israel. I would like to tell you something, that I was very sad to realize what happened this summer in Gaza, because during my previous job in the ministry that you have mentioned, I encourage our army to allow as much as they can to enter a lot of construction materials for water project for the benefits of the Palestinian people who live in Gaza and suffer from water scarcity. And what I found this summer, that Hamas used these materials to build terror tunnels against the state of Israel and its own people. So this is the difference.
You just mentioned the activities of last summer, which we are going to get into details very shortly. And you know that there is increasing opposition by some Jews of Israeli government policies towards the Palestinians and the Gazans in particular. Let me just read part of it to you. This is a statement from families of the Holocaust. Quote, "As Jewish survivors and descendants of survivors and victims of the Nazi genocide, we unequivocally condemned the massacre of Palestinians in Gaza and the ongoing occupation and colonization of historic Palestine by the Jewish state." This is hard talk on Israel by Israel from Israelis.
First of all, I would like to remind you that as a democratic state, Israel encourages pluralistic views. And that means that not everyone should talk as the government. He has free to have his own opinion and sometimes to go against the government.
But nobody could have expected such a statement from survivors of the Holocaust. Everybody knows what the Holocaust represents in Jewish history, but these are survivors of the Holocaust.
First of all, you have mentioned only one family. I know.
I mean families. This is a collective letter.
I know another. I don't know how many.
It was. They wrote this letter to the New York Times.
Yes, but there were a lot of Holocaust survivors, and some of them have this opinion. Some of them has different opinion. They are ready to live in peace with the Arabs, Palestinians, but on the same time, if they need, they're ready to fight to secure the security of the citizen of the State of Israel. I would like to tell you there is a big difference. The Holocaust was a unique event in the modern history. The Jews who live in Germany wanted to be part of the German society, and even some of them fought in the First World War. And the Arabs, Palestinians, who live today in Israel or before in the Palestine under the British mandate, they called to destroy the State of Israel. They started a fight against the State of Israel, a war. They lost the war. And now they claim that Israel should compensate the refugee. I would like to tell you that this is out of the context of the history events.
I like what you say, Ambassador NADAV Cohen, but do you know that the people criticizing Israeli policies towards Gazans, towards Palestinians, are not only members of the Holocaust survivors? Let me just give you a quotation of what one Israeli intellectual has said, Professor Ilan Pappé. Ilan Pappé says that since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, you have been practicing a policy of ethnic cleansing and racism towards the Palestinians, and it goes further to describe Israeli actions into Palestinian territories as incremental genocide. These are words that can take Israel to the International Criminal Court.
Okay, first of all, Ilan Pappé himself admitted in an article in 2004 in Cambridge University that his position is origin from his sympathy to the Arab Palestinians, and he doesn't commit himself to rely on facts, on the real truth. This is what he said. One second. This is what he said. I can show you. I have here with me the quotation, the reference. Beside that, I can tell you that Israel haven't made any massacre against the Palestinian in Gaza.
But they will give you examples of Shabra and Shatila in 1982.
It wasn't Israeli who did it. It was the Christians, militant groups in Lebanon. The responsibility of the Israelis were, it was that Israel didn't took the real measure to prevent it. And the Minister of Defense at that time was forced to leave his office. And there isn't any massacre in Gaza. If you ask, one second, if you check with the Hamas themselves, they will tell you that most of the killings and most of those who killed last summer in 2012, in 2009, were Hamas members who fought against Israel. And according to the international law, Israel has the right to defend himself. This one thing. I would like to tell you one more thing. In Nigeria, the Nigerian army, with its fight against Boko Haram, killed much more civilians people than were killed in last summer in Gaza. Palestinians were killed. One second.
Ambassador?
And no one talked about it.
The Nigerian government will tell you that you are entering into their internal affairs.
I'm telling you that there is a lot of events around the world, that there is a lot of civilians' casualties, because when you fight in asymmetric war against terror organization that use its own people as a defensive human shield and spread a lot of explosive near the houses to increase the number of casualties because they know it will help them to blame State of Israel like you do now. And also,
am I blaming the State of Israel?
This is what you have saying, that we do massacres, we do colonize.
I'm simply reading quotations from
international law.
Israelis.
No, sorry, we follow the international law. Beside that, I would like to tell you that if you ask military experts in the United States Army, in the British Army, in the Canadian Army, in NATO, they will tell you that Israeli army is most efficient in the war, in asymmetric war,
Absolutely.
with preventing killing of innocent citizens. But
there
is, when you
there
have
is no
war,
denial,
no, excuse me.
there is no
When
denial, Ambassador, of the fact that the Israeli military is efficient. But the same countries you are quoting, the United States, the United Kingdom, NATO member countries, have said that Israeli activities into Gaza are unacceptable. The United Nations Security Secretary General Ban Ki-moon described the last actions in Gaza as a criminal act, and that you were informed that people were living in United Nations-run schools, and you decided to bombard. Why are you doing all of this?
First of all, not all the killings in Gaza, including inside schools, were done by Israel. Some of them were done by Hamas. Secondly, if Israel attacked one target, but all around the area surrounded by a lot of explosive, if there is terror tunnel against Israel going under infrastructure in Gaza, and we have to explode them with our fight against terror, it causes more damage. But the responsibility doesn't rely on us according to the international law. Regarding the Secretary General of the UN, he said both things on the same time, but he doesn't offer a real solution. He said Israel has the right to defend himself, but he doesn't offer any other means. Of course, everything that Israel did since 1948 or 47 until today, accused by the Arabs and their supporters that this is a war crime. But if you check it in the context of all the events in the world, even after the Second World War, in the last 50 years of the 20th century, you will see that Israel has very, how to call it, it's sad to say it, but because we deal with loss of people and wars and things like this, and we wish to have peace. But Israel does or follow the international law and does as much as it can to prevent of death of innocent civilians.
Okay, you have talked so much about last summer. Some people believe that this has been a disproportionate action into Palestinian territories. Let me just give you statistics of the last summer. This data, last year's war alone, Israel fired 5,226 airstrikes on Gaza compared to 4,591 rockets and mortars on Israel from Gaza. 2,104 Palestinians died compared to 68 on the Israeli side. These are statistics provided by the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the Israeli Defense Forces. You will read with me that this is disproportionate. And you know what? All the statistics agree that the civilian population who died from the Palestinian side was about 70% as compared to 8 Israelis.
Which operation you relate to? Because the numbers you gave me relate to all this operation in 2009.
This is just 2014 I'm talking about.
No, in 2014, Israel has 76 casualties, killed people.
The figures have changed.
No, it's from the beginning. Altogether, the civilians and the soldiers who were killed, it was about 76. And to quote me, numbers doesn't say the real picture, because you have to realize that Israel, the size of the state of Israel, it's in average less than half the size of any region in Cameroon. And just think about it, that if you will borrow the threat from Boko Haram in the far north and the threat that you face from the east region because of the situation in Central Africa, and you shrunk them into a size of the state of Israel, it means that in Israel, more than 10 years, we are under threat and many times under a real attack of rockets by Hamas and Palestinian organization from Gaza. I don't want us to get
into this debate of who first fired, who did fire.
It's not who first fired.
Okay.
Because we had the negotiation in 2000. And who were stepped out of the negotiation room were the Palestinians.
Because you have refused to go back to the pre-1967 international borders. You have refused to stop Jewish colonization, and you have refused to stop settlement into Palestinian territories. And they say that the moment these benchmarks are not provided, the moment they don't have Jerusalem as capital, it cannot work.
Have you checked Clinton proposal?
I've
or
checked.
You're just quoting things? Have you checked Olmer's proposal?
I've checked.
No, because what you have quoted me, it means that you don't know exactly
they
what
want
happened.
the totality of it, and I know that
when
Olmer
you go,
offered is Jerusalem.
Also, Clinton talked about Jerusalem, believe me. And there isn't any justification to leave the negotiation room and to start the violence they have started, first of all. Secondly, I don't know any country in the world, including Cameroon, that would be allowed to any force, external force, to put a threat on its own capital, on its main town like Douala, like Yaoundé, like Bamenda, for a daily threat from the Hamas, from the Palestinian. Every day in Israel, you don't know it because it's not interesting the media, but our security services acting every day, 24/7, to prevent a lot of terror actions against Israeli civilians from Palestinians from West Bank and from Gaza. So it's not a clear picture like you said. It's very easy to put words like colonization, massacres, all of these things, but you have to stick with the fact. And if an American expert or NATO expert who fought in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in other places, that they have asymmetric wars, and the number of casualties that they have, it's much higher than in any event or terror or war action that Israel has to do to fight against terror from Hamas. They tell you that Israel does the best way, more than all of these armies. I haven't heard that someone sought to sue NATO regarding its action in Kosovo.
I like your discussion on that, but you know that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that no father on planet Earth would like to see what is happening in Gaza, children being killed, that there is no parent on planet Earth. But let us end. You know that as you and I talk, peace talks between Palestinians and the Israelis are shelved somewhere. When are we going to have a relaunch of negotiations for a final peace deal?
First of all, I would like to say that I'm very sorry that John Kerry failed. But, and I would like to see the resumption, to renew the negotiations soon. But
can we have a timetable?
No. You cannot have timetable because I cannot part of the negotiation. I cannot tell you what's going on. What I can tell you from my experience in my previous job, we offered for the Palestinians in Gaza to give them an additional quota of waters to fight their water scarcity. And they rejected it, not because of the Israeli activity or Israeli policy, only because of its own internal debates between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Today, we have two parties. We have Hamas from one hand that try as much as he can to provide terror actions against the state of Israel. He still support, he still support its ideology to destroy the state of Israel. And from the other hand, we have the Palestinian Authority that instead of continue the negotiation, they go every time to unilateral steps in the international arena.
I'm afraid we have to end here. You just said that Israel is a democracy, but do you know that Hamas won the most democratic elections in the world and everybody refused? I'm afraid we have to end here. Thanks very much for accepting to be guest on Global Watch.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Ambassador.